It's my Nerd World in Depeche Mode, the podcast. On this week's episode, I'll give you my thoughts about the BBC2 piano sessions that debuted this morning, Thursday. Talk a little bit about life as a Depeche Mode fan in 2023, and it's good, plus your listener feedback. As always, if you want to support My Nerd World and you like science fiction and you're a reader, I hope you'll head on over to mynerdworld.net and check out the science fiction space opera series EMBARK, especially if you are a Depeche Mode fan, and of course you are. You're listening to this show, as the main character in the series is also a Depeche Mode fan set in the distant future. You can also go to mynerdworld.net to find out more about the books and everything My Nerd World. Let's get to this week's episode.
Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
My Nerd World.
It is My Nerd World. Welcome to it. I'm your host, Jon Justice. Here to talk about all things the greatest band ever. It's subjective, but you know it's true. Depeche Mode the podcast. I had a moment of panic. I didn't share this last week on the show because I wasn't sure how things were going to shake out. But if you've been listening for a while, you know that there are episodes, earlier episodes, where I played Depeche Mode music on the show. Whenever I do that, though, I get dinged by YouTube because the shows go up on YouTube along with going up on all the podcast platforms. And so I decided a while back that I wouldn't do that anymore, which is why thank you to Tokyo Skyline for the intro. I used that in some of my own music that I've created for the show, which is a bummer because I wish I could play more music on the show, but I monetize these. I don't do Patreon or things like that. I just ask you support My Nerd World, and if you like science fiction, you go and pick up my science fiction series if you want to support the show. But I do monetize on YouTube and the podcasting platforms. So, and I've been dinged. Even recently, I got dinged when I played the remix version by Camel Fat that was recorded live before the release of Ghosts Again. Still no word on when we're getting the Ghost Again single, by the way. There was some jokes that went around over April Fool's Day last weekend, and there was talk that those singles were supposed to be released on the 31st, and then I don't know if it was April Fool's or not. Somebody had said that there were some pressing issues with the vinyl, and they weren't going to come out, and then there was a joke about a typo and the H being left off the cover, so it said Goats Again. I assume that was an April Fool's Day joke, but as of today, we still don't know when we're getting those remixes, and we know from the band that they've listened to remixes. We should be getting a single release. And potentially the Sundown B-side, the cover that they performed on Radio 2's Piano Room, which I'll talk about here in a bit. So, still no idea. Anyway, I got dinged on that, and then I put out my remixes of Never Let Me Down Again when I combined that with the Last of Us episodes, and I knew that was going to happen. And even when I played the cover from a friend of the show of Heaven, I got dinged from one of the overseas sort of labels for the band, with Heaven appearing on the show. All right, so what am I talking about? Well, I got from iTunes, I got a scary email saying that this International Recording Association was claiming copyright interference for the podcast. And this was coming from iTunes, right? So this wasn't coming from YouTube. And I never received anything like this before. And they straight up said, you need to respond to this within 5 days or we're going to pull your podcast down from iTunes. And iTunes along with Spotify. iTunes and Spotify are where I get the most downloads from. And I reached out to this International Record Association and never received a response. I think I know what had happened. I think some of the episodes that I had included music on that were demonetized on, and like I said, I knew that was going to happen, that were demonetized on YouTube were being focused on the podcast platform because those were still monetized. So I had to go and pull those particular podcasts down. So if you happen to go and for whatever reason, were looking for the Never Let Me Down remixes. And there was another one. Oh, the extended mix that I did of Ghosts Again, where I used the snippet of the instrumental portion, or instrumental version snippet of My Cosmos Is Mine from the press conference, and then I combined it with the instrumental version that I have of Ghost Again in the single version. I had to yank that down from the podcast as well. Thankfully, I responded back to iTunes. I'm like, look, I deleted some episodes that I thought may have been the problem, and nobody went and complained to me, so hopefully I took care of it, and thankfully I received an email saying, yes, we believe the matter is resolved. So I knew this going into last week's show, but I didn't share it just because I was waiting to see how it to see if it resolved. And thankfully, it was resolved. All right, so let's talk about some things of more relevancy. The tour continues. They played. We had shows in San Antonio. The band played in Chicago last night, about 6 hours from where I live right now. It was heartbreaking that I couldn't be there. There was a moment yesterday afternoon, right around, I don't know, it was like 2 o'clock. I'm like, man, if I leave right now, I can make it down there for showtime. And friend of the show, Jon, John Justice, went to that show last night, said it was great, and said there were actually $90 tickets available for last night, not including the Ticketmaster charge, which is just grotesque. And that's how I got my tickets the last time I saw them live on the Spirit Tour, on the Global Spirit Tour. I got them really, really late on the floor, and actually had an opportunity to hang out with Jon Justice at that show. But he went there last night, said it was fantastic. Alas, I didn't go. I had to work this morning. But set list has not changed. I know last night they did do Condemnation again, and replaced that with Waiting for the Night to Fall, which had been done at the Kia Forum. I think I mistakenly said the Staples Center. I wasn't even aware that the Forum was still there. I saw Depeche Mode on the Music for the Masses tour. That was the first time I ever saw them live at the time Great Western Forum in Los Angeles, before a few months later seeing the 101 show, Concert for the Masses, at the Rose Bowl, Pasadena, on June the 18th, 1988. I didn't realize that it was still open and it had been redubbed the Kia Forum. That was cool, though. I watched some of the clips of that, and I have a lot of fond memories of Depeche Mode, not just seeing them in Southern California, whether it was there, Universal Amphitheater, Dodger Stadium, but specifically the Forum and that series of nights that they did on the devotional tour. So the big question remains is, once they're done with this warm-up leg of the tour and they head overseas, are things going to change? You have speculated, and we'll get to listener feedback later on in the show, that perhaps the set list could change dramatically as they head overseas, considering that these were warm-up shows. Some people have speculated that the rather sparse stage design, and I tend to agree, perhaps that might change. I do like the background, and having seen the majority of the show, watching clips on YouTube, I do like the visuals and how they've incorporated the side screens, the main screen with the M, and the lighting work. The stage itself with the slightly raised platforms for the keyboard and the drums left and right. I do wonder whether or not it's going to change as they get further into the tour, and whether or not these warm-up shows, doing that thing with my fingers, were indeed warm-up shows to a different concert experience. If I were to put money down, I don't think it's going to change all that much. As I talked about on last week's episode, Martin had said, well, they're doing 23 songs live now. Martin had said they had rehearsed 25 to 28. Myself, like a lot of people, would love to see them do more from Memento Mori, but I was reading a comment, and it might be in listener feedback, so I may be talking more about this in a bit, but given just how big the catalog is for the band, I understand why they're not. I miss those days. I miss those days of them when they went out on tour, and I talked about this last week, and they did a lot more from the album than what they're than what they're doing now. So let's talk about the big news from, and that was something that I had the opportunity to listen to live this morning, and that was this special recorded session that had been done several weeks back with BBC and Radio 2 and what they call the Piano Room. Thankfully, when this aired live, it fell right into my morning routine heading into the radio show that I host Monday through Friday. So I was able to hear this played live on the show, even though it was pre-recorded. And it's always fascinating to hear European radio, just working in radio, even though I'm on talk radio now. I worked in music radio for a number of years, and the station I work for I'm the only talk station apart from the sports station. So that was fun to listen to. And including the fact that on this particular show with this host, they don't play the full songs. They did for Depeche Mode's performance, but when they're playing just their regular set of songs for the show, they cut them off early. It was rather interesting. But the band performed Ghosts Again, Walking in My Shoes, and the cover of Gordon Lightfoot's. They did the secondary version of that. Their version sounds more like Gordon Lightfoot's version of Sundown. And listen, as I mentioned before, I would have loved to have played it on the show. If you haven't gone and heard it yet, stop the show right now and go, listen, you want to hear this more than you want to hear me go blah, blah, blah about Depeche Mode. It was fantastic. The orchestra version of Walking in My Shoes and Ghosts Again was just stellar. Gave me goosebumps. It makes me want them to do a full concert in this style. It was just simply that good. I'm reminded of when, I'm not a Metallica fan, but I'm reminded when Metallica did a concert with an orchestra, or when MTV used to do their acoustic sessions. And there was something similar to this that was done during one of the K-Rock acoustic Christmas years when Depeche Mode performed, and I believe that was on the Singles tour, where they did not full acoustic, but they did stripped-down versions, and it sounded great. But this with the orchestra just sounded spectacular. I was looking forward to Sundown. I believe we're supposed to get a produced version of this, although that may have been the track list for the single may have been wrong that was floating around that I had seen, because it included a B-side of Sundown. I enjoyed it, not nearly as much as I did Walking in My Shoes and Ghosts Again. Dave's vocals on Sundown were good, but it was clear he hadn't sung it a lot. It seems that, Dave, especially at the start of the promotion for Memento Mori, and in particular, Ghosts Again, as many have mentioned and I've mentioned, Dave's voice was a little rough at the beginning, and it just seems like with a song like Sundown, he hadn't spent a lot of time performing it. It's not to say that Dave doesn't sing great covers. He does. I thought Heroes is spectacular. I just felt that the vocals on that weren't exactly there, even though I really enjoyed it. But to me, the highlights was Walking in My Shoes and Ghosts Again, and just absolutely incredible. And it's similar to what they, there was these, was it Vinegar Hill? Is that what these sessions were? Where they released a version of Ghosts Again, either last week or the week before that came about. Those were really, really good too. So in the interview that Dave did with the host of the show on Radio 2, he said that he was down for it. Martin was a bit reluctant at first, but then when they were done, Martin had said he felt like it was one of the most special things they had done before. So they had done, that they had done. So perhaps we'll see the band go down this road at some point and do something similar to what they did with this Radio 2 Piano Room show. But just fantastic, and would love to hear your thoughts on it. So be sure to email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, or again, if you're listening on YouTube, leave me a comment there. I just want to take a moment before we get into listener feedback. There's not a lot else going on with the band being on tour. They've run through the majority of their interviews, so now we're just kind of into the tour cycle and waiting to see what happens when they head overseas here in the next several weeks. I just wanted to take a moment and talk a bit about being a fan of the band right now and the experience that I've personally had going back to October and the press conference. And I'll even back it up a little bit further to the passing of Fletch and the reminder of how special this band is and how, time is fleeting. But starting with specifically that October press conference, this has been, for me, one of the best fan experiences that I have had since the release of Ultra. I go back to those years of finding Depeche Mode, as I've said so many times, in '86, a year after Shake the Disease came out, hearing it on K-Rock for the first time, recording it on a cassette tape from my stereo, going out and trying to find the song, buying Black Celebration almost by mistake, and then just falling in love with what I was listening to, buying as much of Depeche Mode's catalog as I could up until the release only a year and a half later of Music for the Masses, and that starting me on my concert journey with the band as my small group of friends around me found Depeche Mode as well and were also fans. That time period from, that 86 and discovering the band, Music for the Masses, and then, Violator, Songs of Faith and Devotion, and Ultra, those years are so close together in retrospect to like this huge gap that we've had in the 6 years, the longest period of time that we've ever, gone without Depeche Mode music since the band started. But that concentrated set of years, and I'll just go, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94 to 96. I mean, you're looking about almost the same time period of 6 to 7 years concentrated with the pinnacle of Depeche Mode music, right? Until we get Memento Mori. And it was just an incredibly special time in my life. Those years as I, came into be an adult and so much of it being framed around the band and going to the concerts and buying the music and physically going out and searching for the imports. I mean, those were incredibly special formative years in my life and so many of the lives of you that I've been able to meet during this time period. But this time period from October until now has really been the closest experience to my own group of fan friends that I had back during those years of those former albums. Although this time has taken place on a much different format through social networking. I've made some amazing friends over the years and made some new friends over the course of just the past several months. And being able to share this experience with you, whether it's through the podcast, whether it's on Twitter and My Nerd World, through email, being able to go in November to see my show for this tour with a new friend that I've made. What up, Matt? It's been an incredibly special time. There's an aspect of this that one day I will talk about. I won't do it now because still a little bit too close. But the whole story of how I got the album those so many weeks before it was released and I was able to share it with you. One day I will share that story. But that story in and of itself is special and worthy of its own time talking on the podcast. Don't worry, I won't. I know they're probably going, don't. I won't. But this has just been really incredible as now a 50-year-old Depeche Mode fan, as opposed to the very young Depeche Mode fan that I was back when I was 15, 16, going to see Music for the Masses. And then, over the course of those next few years, That's not to say it wasn't great being a Depeche Mode fan from Ultra on, but Ultra was the last sort of experience, and that was unique in and of itself from sort of the rebirth of the band and thinking the band was over after Alan leaving and being and living in Los Angeles and Orange County at the time when Dave OD'd there and wanting to know what was going to happen. But the release of Ultra, while the band didn't go on tour, I had my friends at the time that I had exposed Depeche Mode to who became fans, being able to go to the Shrine Auditorium Ultra launch party show. I remember going to a record release party at a club on like a Thursday afternoon in Los Angeles and hoping the band was going to make an appearance, and they didn't, but it was still a really fun experience. And I'll include the singles tour into that too. Because in the singles tour, I'd gone with my girlfriend at the time over to Manchester to see the band play live there, and so I'll include that as well. And then Exciter with my wife, but after those shows and after those tours, getting into raising a family and life getting on in and of itself, the release of the album since then, still, of course, went and saw them live, but didn't have that connectivity that I had when I was younger, and certainly not what I've had now through this experience of Memento Mori. And then you get to the album in and of itself, and this album is just special. There's no denying how special this album is. The band has created something unique. Once again, it's not to say the albums that came before it, after Ultra, weren't, but there is just a magic that has returned to Depeche Mode in total with this album. I think they were still able to tap into that magic on certain tracks, on certain releases since Ultra. But for me, Memento Mori is just the complete package and a really unique encapsulation, if I'm using that word correctly, of the band's talents. And the more I listen to it, I've still only been listening to Memento Mori since its release. Maybe listen to 2 or 3 other songs intentionally, but I haven't gone to listen to, and I listen to music all the time, I haven't gone to listen to anything else. And I'm finding myself gravitating towards other songs more and more. Highlights one day of a song that I wasn't really noticing, and liking some songs more than I did before. I love all the tracks on the album. Suddenly now, my favorite Stranger, I'm adoring that song, and Always You. It's an incredible record. So there we go. I'm going blah, blah, blah. Just wanted to share my experience and ultimately say thank you. Thank you for taking this ride with me. You're all my best friends. It's just been an amazing time to be a Depeche Mode fan, and it's in large part because of you who have written to me and been a part of this since the October press conference last year. All right, let's go ahead and get to your listener feedback. You're all friends of the show, so we'll just do that. Stephanie in Germany writes, after this morning, I am all over the place. What an incredibly good piano session we got to hear on the BBC. It's a shame there were only 3 songs. Those voices were unbelievably good. I wish you and your family a great Easter. Best wishes from Stephanie in Germany. Yeah, it was fun. I was prepping for my show this morning while I was listening to it live, and that was a fun experience. All right, What the What writes from YouTube. I always get the physical release for each new DM album because I have physical copies of all the other albums. I still have the CD insert with the printed lyrics. Yep, I still like to have that too. I haven't done that with any other band in quite a few years. Nope, me neither. Alun Muss writes, love listening to your podcast shows. Thank you. I'm Alun, born in Basildon, land of DM, and would pass one of their parents' homes in 80 and 81 as a young child. Follow DM boys since day one. Love the new album and tour date in London in June at Twickenham Stadium in London. I like the set list, a mix of old hits to a selection of album. Boys don't come back to UK much these days, just one show when Germany has many. Don't know fans in the UK need to show, don't know why fans in the UK. show. We need a second tour leg with an indoor show in 2024, maybe at O2. The album is a mix of sounds from the DM era, a whole album. Every song hits a spot of why we love the band. No friends really like them, so yours is a solo thing. Music in the car, turned up loud. Keep up the podcasts. Alan Basildon Boy moved 60 miles away in Essex, though. Thank you for that album. For that, Alan. Alan, I appreciate it. Alan, gotta get that right. A-L-U-N. Yeah, it's a, and not very similar, but it's a bummer that Depeche Mode doesn't play in Minneapolis anymore. I was looking at the Monument book, and they used to play here quite a bit, but they haven't over the course of the last several tours. And it must just be because there's not a very big following of Depeche Mode here, which is a bummer. Jennifer Lefevre writes, great insight on this album. Thank you. Love it more each time I hear it. There are many layers to both lyrics and sounds on this album. A musical masterpiece, in my opinion. Now we get to, this is a fun one. Friend of the show, Chad, says this. I'm sure you're getting lots of song-by-song analysis. I'll spare you that for now. I absolutely love the album. The only song I feel is somehow not at its full potential is Caroline's Monkey, but really not a skipper. It's just the only one that wouldn't be a go-to song for me. The Caroline's Monkey, I've always enjoyed it, but for some reason, again, speaking to some songs that I've been gravitating towards on particular days, just spending time listening to it, I've really enjoyed that song more and more the more I've heard it. And for whatever reason, I keep getting this Policy of Truth vibe from it. And I know it doesn't sound anything like Policy of Truth. Apart from just the instrumentation in the song, I don't know why. It's got that vibe to me. Goes on to say, Nerd Alert, as a diehard fan, I have identified my 7 stages of DM, writes Chad. So here we go. We get anticipation, thrilled, excited, grateful, and assured the album will be boss, hungry for news and listening to Nerd World podcasts. Amazement, first listen. What's this? New sounds. Find old songs. Make mental connections, comparisons to back catalog. Dissection, next few listens, finding which songs fit with your beloved style of DM. Mastermind, playing armchair band member producer mixer, thinking how each song could have been a little better if they did blank. Acceptance, playing nonstop, loving the album for what it is, amazed at how they keep making such amazing music, accepting the album as its own thing, sound, style. Actually happy it's unique and not a rehash of a previous album. Jubilant, hoarse throat, ringing ears from singing 2 hours at best concert ever, and then suspense. I hope this isn't their last album. Could it be? Dang, I have to wait 4 more years. The cool thing is, and I don't disagree with any of that, the cool thing is we know the band has 4 produced tracks from the recording sessions that they're holding off on. When we get them, I do not know, but I'm looking forward to hearing that. But beggars can't be choosers, because Memento Mori is great. Thank you for that, Chad. David Theofold writes, this is my 3rd time writing you, and you have read all my emails, so thank you for that. I have listened to this album every day, 2 or 3 times a day, and it just keeps getting better. The 2 songs that I can't get in on are My Cosmos Is Mine, which is better for me than and Soul With Me. Interesting. This song is a no for me, and I cannot get into it. The other 10 are absolutely phenomenal. Again, it's all subjective, because I still just adore Soul With Me. I have listened to this album on my Denon headphones, on CD on my higher-end home sound system, along with the vinyl, and through Spotify on my Sonos Play 5 Bluetooth speaker. Each source has been totally different listen, but all fantastic. I guess my favorite so far would be vinyl. Dave's vocals sound better than ever on vinyl. Your input is spot on, and I agree with you when you say this album has a confidence to it. It's absolutely magical and truly a work of art. Thank you again for putting the time to do this. Thank you. It's been a fun journey so far. It has, David. Thank you. Friend of the show, Jeff, who's been to several shows on this tour and is heading to New York to see them. You can go and purchase, and I think it's from the website. You can go to DepecheMode.com, and you can purchase the digital version of the album, but it actually gives you the choice of the quality of the tracks that you want. So he had messaged me because I was talking about how I got the CD. Oh, and speaking of which, I need to I forgot. I got the Deluxe CD finally. It was supposed to come last Thursday. It didn't come last Thursday. It was supposed to come Saturday. It didn't come Saturday. Finally came on Monday. So I'll talk about this here in just a minute. I forgot. I'll wrap up the show with my review of the Deluxe single. I have it in my hand. Or the Deluxe release. Anyway, if you go to DepecheMode.com, you can purchase the digital version, but you can actually pick the quality of the tracks. So he was mentioning that you could really get high quality digital versions of the album, up to par with what you get on the CD. The CD sounds fantastic in my car, by the way. I still haven't been able to put it. I've been able to, but I haven't. I still haven't put it on my sound system here at home. I've been waiting for the house to be empty so I could crank it, and that hasn't happened yet. So, Luigi Perrone writes, "Don't Say You Love Me should be the next single." I agree, man. That song at the moment is my favorite on the album. You want to do an interesting little EP? Do In Your Room with Don't Say You Love Me and One Caress. Makes for a very interesting little 3-track, 10-plus minute journey. But Don't Say You Love Me, man, that song is, I love that song. Lars Gutiel, and again, my apologies if I mispronounce any of your names. Lars writes, "I bought my physical copies in a mall in Warsaw, Poland. People were standing in a long row waiting for the shop to open. Inside, there was a DM bus installed where they had all the formats, including the red and transparent vinyls and all CD options. Great experience and memory, so much more memorable than ordering it online." Yeah, like I mentioned last week, going over to Barnes & Noble and getting the regular version, which I'm glad I did, getting the deluxe version. The deluxe version is cool, but I'm not going to lie. I think I like the regular standard version. Hero Protagonist writes, "I absolutely love this album. Finally got my deluxe CD in the mail, but now it looks like I'm going to have to pick up the digipack for those missing images. Yep, and the alternative cover. Yep. Can't help but think they knew what they were doing when they did that. Yep. Oh well, one for the car and one for the house. And to that I say yes again." Thank you, Hero Protagonist. Jeremy Casper writes, "Thank you for the podcast leading up to the release. This is my first comment, although Jeremy's written me quite a bit. But I've listened to all of it. You are correct. This album will stand the test of time. It is truly a masterpiece, and I rank it up there with their top 5 albums. I would have liked to have heard a hard-hitting song like Wrong or Dead of Night, but the whole thing is just so smooth and perfect with beautiful melodies and hard-hitting bass lines. I also would have liked a song about sex like they usually do, but Martin is remarried, has a couple of young girls, so his sex life might not be stable now and not as crazy as it was before, LOL. When I say sex, I mean a song like World in My Eyes, Sister of Night, I Want You Now, those kinds of songs. I got you. The closest sex song on the CD is Never Let Me Go. An amazing album overall that will stand the test of time, I'm sure of it. The album has its own sound, so it's hard to compare it to others. Each song has its own parts that make me think this is the best track, and then another song does the same thing for me. The Heaven Help Me, Heaven Help Us in People Are Good is mesmerizing. The complete vibe of Before We Drown, the punching bass lines of Wagging Tongue are my favorite Stranger. I love that middle portion of My Favorite Stranger, by the way. I just think that's awesome. There's no hard-hitting song like John the Revelator, Wrong, Personal Jesus, Dead of Night, but the whole thing is excellent. A little mellow, but the melodies are addicting, and Martin and Dave's harmonies are angelic. I'd rank it with Ultra, Playing the Angel, somewhere between Violator and Songs of Faith and Devotion. It's at least as good or better than half or more of their albums. I'm loving every minute of it. I love how the songs are not predictable. Must hear a dozen times before you can sing along properly. Yeah, 9 out of 10, easy. It's surely in my top 5 albums for DM. Thank you for that, Jeremy. Thaddeus writes, "Been following your podcast for years now." Always hear, it sounds so weird when people say that. I forget that I've been doing this that long. It's only because I took that big old gap. There's like a year gap in the podcast. Anyway, I'm so glad there's so much to talk about. Me too. I love Memento Mori, best album since Playing the Angel, and the most Depeche Mode sounding album since Ultra. I got to see them in Sacramento and Los Angeles, great sets. I was glad to see the change from Waiting for the Night to Condemnation. My seats in Sacramento were killer. My Los Angeles seats were just okay. I think Christian is the lifeblood of the shows now. He just destroys the drums. It elevates the songs. You read an email from a listener who said there's Depeche Mode fans and then there's Violator fans, and that cracked me up. My favorite album is Black Celebration. Favorite songs are Nothing's Impossible and Dream On. I'm just really glad they have a new incredible album of great tunes from these guys. Easily my favorite band of all time. Take care, Thaddeus. Thank you, Thaddeus. I haven't included, by the way, a couple of negative emails just because I didn't want to bother. There was one somebody had written, and if you listen on YouTube, you can probably see it. I don't remember which show it was, but they made a comment like, what was it again? Like Depeche Mode fans like being blinded. Like, this album sucks, and if you like it, you're just a blind fan or something like this. And, it's fine if you don't like a record. I have no problem with that at all, but don't harp on those that do like it and suddenly try to justify your own dislike for the album by saying that those that do like it are blind to it and are just, what's the word? I always look at apologists, right? I consider myself to a certain aspect to be a Star Wars apologist. That being said, even I can criticize Star Wars. This week's Mandalorian was not very good at all. I'll be talking about that when I get finished with this podcast on my Star Wars podcast coming up. All right, Amanda writes in from mynerdworld.net. Says, thank you for your Depeche Mode podcast. Like you, I am of a certain age, and DM is the soundtrack of my teen, college years, and now adult life. There is no other band like them. Their lyrics move me like no other music. And their music embodies melancholy and the joys of life and love simultaneously. I just saw them in concert in San Antonio on Sunday, and it was an amazing show. Sadly, this was my first DM concert, and my only regret is not seeing them more throughout the years. They look and sound fantastic despite their age. I'll keep following your show now. That I have found you/it, thank you, and I'm certain you will gain more followers as Memento Mori goes on. Like you, the more I listen to the new album, the more I am enjoying it. Thanks again. Keep up the great work. Best wishes, Amanda. It actually is the other way. Thank you so much, Amanda, for the message. And I don't get very many through the website. I forget you can even leave a message on the website, but you can at mynerdworld.net. It goes the other way. As it relates to the podcast, and this happened on Spirit, the downloads skyrocket single to release of the album, and then once the tour starts, they just kind of start going down. I'll probably gain new listeners, but you don't have the sheer volume of people going and searching for information like you do when the singles and the releases come out. But hopefully I will get more just standard followers along the way. You kind of end up growing your audience, and your audience hopefully sticks with you as you continue. So, last one comes from Pizza Mike. My take on the new album is excellent. All the songs are good, in my opinion. I haven't skipped a song yet. I do have one comment on Never Let Me Go. The guitar riff reminds me of She Wants Revenge. That's really interesting because I hadn't thought about that until you mentioned it. And I'm actually quite the fan of She Wants Revenge. I found them, it was shortly after the first album had come out by them. And they had that, that first album, and those first two albums actually just have this very unique sort of throwback vibe to them. And I really like She Wants Revenge. So once you said that about Never Let Me Go, I can't unhear it, and I'm glad. Because that's probably the one part of the song that I didn't really care for, and now that you mentioned that, I appreciate it more. Mike goes on to say, it's a good thing. I took your advice on getting a hard copy of the album. It does sound very clear and crisp. My favorites are as if it is on cassette, and the B-side. My favorites are as if it was on a cassette. The B-sides after Caroline's Monkey. So I did check out the concert footage with the duet of Waiting for the Night. I hope they play it in December. Well, I said my opinion and thoughts. Thanks again for your hard work and dedication you do with this project. Keep up the good work. All the best, Pizza Mike. Thank you, Pete. Thank you. I almost called you Pizza. Pizza Mike. All right, before I let you go, I do want to mention I did get the Deluxe CD. When I had ordered this initially, because I usually get the deluxe one anyways. I think we were all kind of assuming we were going to get extra tracks, and we didn't. So that's a bit of a bummer. And I like the fact that we got remixes with the last one too for Spirit. So the deluxe version is basically booklet style. It has the wing artwork, but it's all in black and white, like the conventional, like the artwork is. But it doesn't have both on the cover. It just has one on the front and then the other one on the back. When you open it up, the gatefold into the first page on the left, it just has the red Depeche Mode logo. And then we have the tribute to Andrew John Fletcher, 61 to 22, in our hearts and minds, Dave and Martin, in the next page. And then we go through a series of black and white and color photos of Anton before we're treated to the lyrics, other Anton Corbijn pictures that we've seen, a nice color photo of the side shot from the Ghosts Again video, but in color, of Martin and Dave with their hoods up and their canes playing chess. More of the lyrics, another color photo of the two of them, the photo you've probably seen of them with the hearse wearing the top hats. More lyrics, more photos, and then singular photos of both of them. A color photo of them walking across the street in what I believe is more than likely New York City. Looks a little Abbey Road-ish. We get the liner notes. In the back, we get another black and white photo of Martin and Dave next to a tree and graffiti in the background. Another color photo. We get the track listing. And then the last gatefold, the back side of it, of the booklet, is where the CD is stored with Memento Mori on it. I mean, it's nice. I'm glad I have it for my collection, but I'll be honest with you. Let me go into it. In my cabinet here is where I keep all my music. I actually like the regular version with the fold-out gatefold, the pictures that are used, and especially the tribute photo in New York City of Martin and Dave with the shadow and the third shadow of Fletch and the embossed logo on the front. So glad I had them both. Not disappointed that I got the deluxe edition, but I think I prefer the regular release over it. Somebody had sent an email last week because I'd mentioned about how I missed the jewel cases that they would break easily. And while that is true, I would still like to have the option of having the jewel case. Once again, I had every intention of making this a short episode, and I've talked for 42 minutes. Every single time. All right, before I let you go, if you like science fiction, I hope you'll go and check out my science fiction space opera series. Talk a little bit about it while I play my quasi-Depeche Mode music in the background. Treat yourself, a friend, or a family member with science fiction, set in the future where air and space flight culture has replaced car culture. It was inspired in part by Depeche Mode, life in the so-called space age, the world we live in, and life in general. Depeche Mode plays a huge part in the underlying themes of the story. Love, lust. There's no sex in the stories, but the main character has those desires of the female protagonist in the story, even if it's not explicit. The main character himself is a massive Depeche Mode fan at a time when music of the 80s through the 2000s is nostalgic and popular among the characters of the story. And they do feature references to Depeche Mode, both direct and indirect, while telling an exciting science fiction space opera saga. EMBARK Book 1. Taft Gardio worked as a flight mechanic to cover the cost of his constant ship upgrades, but when he agrees to help fellow pilot Keith Amaro investigate a cryptic message from her past, he'll need every advantage he can get to survive. As an industrial catastrophe sweeps across the planet, he makes a shocking discovery. Now, in the middle of a global evacuation, Taft is on the run to protect the power in his possession as two rival megacorporations are on the brink of interstellar war. Realizing he may hold the key to saving Earth's evacuees, Taft is pushed to his limits as he fights for humanity's future among the stars. Don't miss this fast-paced and action-packed science fiction adventure. 7 books in the series. If you like your science fiction epic filled with some Depeche Mode, romance, and action, and EMBARK is perfect for you. Written for adults, but great for ages 11+. Buy EMBARK Book 1 today. Available on Amazon.com under EMBARK or Jon Justice or at mynerdworld.net. Hardcover, paperback, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. I'll be back again next week. Until then, I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. Bye.
My Nerd World.
Hello, this is Martin Gore from Depeche Mode.
Hi, this is Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode, and you are listening to
My Nerd World.